Physiology and Diagnostic. Today's session we will discuss about cell, normal cell structure and function. So, what is cell? A cell is the smallest living things in the human organism, and all the living structures in the human body are made up of cells. There are hundreds of different types of the cells in the human body, which vary in the shape. For example, long, flat, long and thin, so short and thick, and the size. For example, small granule cells of the cerebellum in the brain, lump sum 4 micrometer of the huge oocytes produced in the female reproductive organs 100 micrometer and function. However, all cells have three main parts: the plasma membrane, the cytoplasm and the nucleus. The plasma membrane, often called the cell membrane, is an flexible barrier that separates the insides of the cell from the environment outside the cell and regulate what can pass in the internally the cell is divided into the cytoplasm and the nucleus. The cytoplasm is cyto means cell and plasma means something it is molded is where the most functions of the cells are carried out. It looks a bit like mixed fruit jelly. So where the watery jelly is called the cytosol, and the different fruits in where are called organelles, and the cytosol also contains many molecules and ions involved in the cell function, and different organelles also perform different cell functions, and many are also separated from the cytosol by membrane, and the largest organelle, the nucleus, is separated from the cytoplasm by a nuclear envelope membrane. It contains the DNA gene that code for the protein necessary for the cell to function. So, generally speaking, the inside the environment of the cell is called the intracellular fluid, and intracellular fluid within refer to all fluid contained in cytosol, organelles and nucleus. While the environment outside the cell is called the extracellular fluid. Extracellular, it means outside of the refers to all fluid outside cells. And plasma, the fluid parts of the blood, is the only extracellular fluid compartment that links all cells in the removed and the representation of a simple human cell, and the easiest compartment that links all cells in the body. So, the plasma cell membrane separates the inner environment of the cell from the extracellular fluid. It is composed of a fluid phospholipid bilayer, two layers of the phospholipid, and below and the other molecules. Not many substances can cross the phospholipid bilayer, so it serves separate the inside of the cell from the extracellular fluid, and other molecules found in the membrane including cholesterol, proteins, glycoproteins and glycolipids, some of which are cholesterols, a type of lipid, makes the membrane a little stronger. So there are different proteins found either crossing the bilayer. Integral proteins or on its surface. Peripheral proteins have many important functions. The channel and transporter, it also carrier proteins regulate the movement of the specific molecules and ions. In receptors, protein in the membrane initiate changes in the cell activity by binding and responding to the chemical signal such as hormones, and other proteins include that act as a structural anchors to bind neighboring cells and enzymes. So, the glycoproteins and glycolipids in the membrane act as identification markers or label on the extracellular surface of the membrane. Thus, the plasma membrane has many functions and works as both a gateway and a selective barrier. Almost all human cells contain a nucleus where DNA, the genetic material that ultimately controls all cell process, is found. The nucleus is the largest intracellular organelle, and the only one visible using a light microscope, much like the cytoplasm of a cell and enclosed by the plasma membrane, and the nucleus is surrounded by the nuclear envelope that separate that contents of the nucleus from the contents of the cytoplasm, and nuclear pores in the envelope are small holes that control which ions and molecules, for example proteins and RNA, can move in and out the nucleus. Additionally to the DNA, the nucleus contains many nucleoproteins. Together, DNA and these proteins are called chromatin. A region inside the nucleus called the nucleus is related to the production of RNA molecule and needed to the transmit and express the information coded in DNA, and organelles in any structure inside a cell that carries out a metabolic function, and the cytoplasm contain many different organelles, each which is specialized function, and the nucleus discussed above is the largest cellular organelle, but it is not considered part of the cytoplasm. Many organelles are cellular compartments separated from the cytosol by one or more membrane, very similarly in structure to the cell membrane, while others such as centrioles and free ribosomes don't have to the membrane, and structurally and functionally of different organelles such as mitochondria, which are specialized and synthesized to the proteins necessary for the cell functions, and membranes of the rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum from a network of interconnected tubes inside of the cells and that continue with the nuclear envelope. And these organelles are also connected to the Golgi apparatus and the plasma membrane of the vesicles. So the different cells contain different amount of the different organelles depending on their function. For example, muscle cells contain many mitochondria, WB, while cells in the pancreas and digestive enzymes contain many ribosomes and secretory vesicles. And the cell wall is a rigid non-living layer that is found outside the cell membrane and surround the cell. Plants, bacteria and fungi all have cell walls. In plants, the wall is comprised of the cellulose and it consists of three layers that help supports the plant, and these layers including the middle lamella, the primary cell wall and the secondary cell wall. So the middle lamella separates one cell from the another cell, and it is a thin membrane layer on the outsides of the cell, and it is made up of sticky substances called pectin. And primary cell wall is on the insides of the middle lamella and mainly composed of cellulose, and the secondary cell wall lies alongside the cell membrane. It is made up of a thick and tough layer of the cellulose, which is held together by a hard waterproof substance called lignin, and it also only found in cells which provide mechanical support in plants. The functions of the cell wall the main functions of the cell wall is to protect the inner parts of the plant cells and give plant cells a more uniformly and regular shape and provide support for the plant body. And the cell wall is completely permeable to water and mineral salts, which allow the distribution of nutrients throughout the plant, but the opening in the cell wall are called plasma which contains strands of the cytoplasm that connect the adjacent cells, and this allows the cells to interact with one another. The cell membrane, also called the plasma membrane, physically separates the intracellular space inside the cell from the extracellular environment, and all plants and animal cells have cell membrane, and the cell membrane surrounds and protects the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is a part of the protoplasm and is the living components of the cell. The cell membrane, it is a composed of double layer special lipids called phospholipids, and phospholipids consist of a hydrophilic water-loving head and hydrophobic tail. The hydrophobic head of the phospholipid polar then can therefore dissolve in the water, and the lipid bilayer forms spontaneously due to the properties of the phospholipid molecules. So the role of the osmosis with the in a simple normal cell structure, when the concentration of solutes in solution is low, the water concentration is high, and we say there is a high water potential. So osmosis is the environment movement of the water from a region of higher water potential. So the lower water potential across a semi-permeable membrane that separates the two regions, and movement of the water always occurs down a concentration gradient. For example, from higher water potential dilute solution to lower potential osmosis, it is a passive process and doesn't require any input of the energy. But the cell membrane allow molecules of the water to pass through, but they don't allow molecules of most dissolved substances, for example salt and sugar, to pass through. As water enters the cell via osmosis, it creates a pressure known as osmotic pressure. In biological systems, osmosis, it is a vital to plant and animal cell survival. But that demonstrates how osmosis affects the red blood cells when they are placed in three different solutions with different concentration. The active transportation is the movement of substances against a concentration gradient from the region of low concentration to high concentration using an input of the energy. And in biological systems, the form in which this energy occurs is adenosine triphosphate, and this process transports substances through a membrane protein, and the movement of substance is selective via the carrier protein and can occur into out of the cells. So in general, eukaryotic cells are much bigger than prokaryotic cells. Most bacteria are 1 to 10 microns in diameter, and eukaryotic cells are typically 10 to 100 microns in diameter. A large cell requires much more in terms of the cellular components, and uptake from the environment is also a problem. For the large cells, there is less surface area compared to the volume, but the distribution of nutrients from one portion of a large cells to another is also a problem, simply because of the distance required for the nutrients to the travel. And the most cells are small, sufficiently surface area to accommodate the volume, and larger organisms don't generally have larger cells than smaller organisms, just simply more cells. So the plasma membrane, it is a double layer of phospholipids. Various proteins are attached to it, and carbohydrate side chains are found only on the outer surface of plasma membrane. And functions of plasma membrane is it is a selective barrier that allow the passage of the oxygen, nutrients, and waste for the whole volume of the cell. And the nucleus contains most of the genes in a eukaryotic cell. Some genes are located in mitochondria and chloroplast, and the nucleus average about 5 microns in diameter. The nucleus is enclosed by a nuclear envelope, which is a double membrane of 20 to 40 nanometer apart, where the double membranes are fused. A nuclear pore complex allows the large macromolecules and particles to pass through. So the nuclear side of the envelope is lined by the nuclear lamina, a network of the intermediate filaments that maintain the shape of the nucleus. So in the nucleus, the DNA and the associated proteins are organized into the fibrous material called chromatin. In a normal cell, they appear as diffuse mass. However, when the cell prepares to divide, the chromatin fibers coil up to the in separate structures like chromosomes.